Hello, fellow beings of light. Shocking, but what lies ahead is both episode 28 of our podcast and our activation for the fall equinox. We are just combining things left and right this month, or rather my team is. And yes, I am very aware that the equinox was on Monday. I've been telling them this all week, believe me, but here we are on the 27th, 2/7/9. And while we're at it, 999 is 27 as well. 9. I get it. And I'm trusting. They always have their reasons for when things come through and when they are shared with all of you, even if I rarely understand them. The fall equinox is our doorway to what lies ahead in the remaining months of the year. Actually, doorway isn't the right word. Descent. Our descent into what lies ahead in the remaining months of the year. But perhaps not in the way you or I are thinking. That's what I'm getting. Our guide, or technically our guides, are making themselves known, and not just that, but are stepping forward and in already. It almost feels like I'm being kicked out of my own episode and activation of the discussion a little bit. And my sassy and sarcastic side kind of wants to make a joke about them doing so to mansplain it to all of us. But I know that's not the case. I'm feeling like it's more of a nudge that we have a lot to get through and they just want to dive right into the depths of it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, our guide. And I'm also getting two of the personifications he has embodied on Earth. Hence it being one, but technically many. Archangel Metatron, representing stillness and conscious choice, and his personifications as Osiris, representing resurrection, and Hades, representing rebirth. The three independently and together having a role to play in what we are going to get into today, and what we will be initiating in the form of truths and activating in the form of momentum, in keeping with what we have been building over these summer months, building that momentum. Together, the three represent phases of the year and phases of each 9-year cycle. 3 phases of our journey, individually during a year, and 3 phases collectively during a 9-year cycle. Stillness, resurrection, rebirth. The 9-year cycle, I understand, 3 years in each part of the cycle, it divides up evenly. But we have 4 seasons and 4 seasonal shifts, 2 equinoxes, 2 solstices. How does that work out? We have January to April, May to August, September to December. The last phase, September to December, has both an equinox and a solstice in it, an initiation of momentum, and then a choice that must be made to fall backwards and repeat the prior phases all over again, or to step into the new year from a new, more expansive place. The latter is how it is meant to be. Flow, movement forward, but only if we allow it to be. Are we going to start the new year or the new 9-year cycle riding a momentum of remembrance and expansion that continues on to remember and expand more, to flow, to move forward? Or are we going to hesitate and go back to where we started at the beginning of the year or the 9-year cycle before, which is often where we started the year and the 9-year cycle before that, and the one before that, and the one before that, especially collectively. Stuck in the same distortions, the same patterns, the same perceived suffering and blocks. Ooh, I like where this is going. I think this is going to be a good one. I can feel it. So stick with me with our guides. Okay. Why are you going to guide us through all of the phases when we are only on the last one for the year and for the current 9-year cycle? Sorry, not sorry to our guides. My inner child is full of questions today, and I am trusting there's a reason for it. That bringing the innocence of questions into the flow of what is coming through from our guides is necessary to achieve what they want us to receive. So this just might be a fun one as well. No, that's wrong. Oh boy. I have this thing I do, or rather that my inner child does, when my adult self is struggling a bit. Not with anything specific, but just in general. Like my vibes are off. She's saying like my mojo is off. I've gotten so used to being in 0 point and being fairly unshakable that when I am shaken up a bit, I don't really recognize it right away. And I don't initiate my old practices of cleansing and protecting my field. So my inner child, she steps in. My husband is usually with me in these moments. And his reaction is either, "You are so weird." And I'm like, "You married me." Or more and more, since I started doing it, he joins in. He joins me. He's even actually initiated it a few times this month himself. And I think that is why I'm being called to share it here before we move forward into deeper things and into initiating and activating a momentum of truth that will get us over the hurdles that are going to try to hold us back as we move through the next few months towards the end of this year and the end of this 9-year cycle. So I'm going to do it 3 times, being told 3. And I want you to join me to repeat after me. These will be woohoos. Silly, but just go with it. Just let go and go with it. Woohoo! 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 Actually, I'm being called to go a step further and have you all pause this recording. Head up to the search bar and search for Sarah Bareilles' Brave, the official music video. I'll link to it in the description as well. Listen to it. Dance along with it. Feel the codes within it. Embrace your inner child and innocence. Then come back to me. Welcome back. And one more. Woohoo! Okay, where were we? My inner child was asking, why are we going to discuss all 3 phases instead of just the last one, the one that we're on? It is because we have reached a place, both individually and collectively, where we are ready to understand not only the significance of the last phase of the year and the last phase of the 9-year cycle, but to understand all 3 phases and how to best make use of them as we prepare to enter a new year and a new 9-year cycle. There's something else there, but they're keeping it hidden for now. We will get to it. Instead, they're drawing me back to something they shared earlier. Why this time, right now, is so significant. The last phase, September to December, has both an equinox and a solstice in it, an initiation of momentum, and then a choice that must be made to fall backwards and repeat the prior phases all over again, or to step into the new year from a new, more expansive place. The end of the last phase in the 9-year cycle and the beginning of the next one has both. My sometimes slow human brain is just now connecting that it is going to be a 111 portal, and on the heels of a 999 portal. The initiated shift for the end of each 9-year cycle, 999, to the beginning of each new 9-year cycle at 111 is the only time that we have 2 triple portals within a 12-month period of each other. There is significance to that, to both. I'm almost getting, we have this thing called a go point when it comes to traffic lights. The point where the light is turning yellow. And we have to make a decision whether we have time to stop safely or continue through it to get closer to where we need to go before it turns red. I'm literally receiving the visual of that this is our go point, not just individually with the end of the year approaching, but collectively because of the upcoming shift into a new 9-year cycle. We can either stop and remain in the perceived, not real safety of where we began in not just the year and the 9-year cycle that is ending, but year after year, 9-year cycle after 9-year cycle before it, where we made the same choice. Or we can trust, put our foot on the energetic gas, pass through that yellow light before the red can stop and hold us back, and step into something new, into something more, individually and collectively. That is why now is the time we need to understand not just the 3 phases of the year for our individual journeys, but more importantly, the 3 phases of the 9-year cycle for our collective journey. Because we are facing a go point collectively, a turning point that we won't have again for another 9 years. Do you feel that? Do you feel the significance of that? I do, and I don't know about all of you, but I'm more than ready to leave the repeating cycles behind. The repeating cycles of this year and the years that came before it, and definitely the last 9 years and the 9-year cycles that came before that. Leave all of that behind and step into something new. Start off my next phases from somewhere new, somewhere I can continue stepping forward, somewhere I can continue expanding instead of going back, somewhere I am free of all perceived restraints, because that is what they are, perceived and self-imposed, as long as we keep allowing them to exist in our thoughts and emotions, as long as we keep allowing them to hold us back in our individual and collective journeys. Hell yeah, let's do that. Let's gain the understanding we need to do that. Let's initiate and activate that. And I'm actually being told to have us go ahead and drop into a meditative state, a fully present state. Not for a journey. I'm not getting that, even though that's what we would normally do for a equinox or solstice activation. But just simply a meditative state, so that, like the combined episode 27 and 999 portal activation, the flow of what is coming through, the momentum we are building, won't be interrupted. Okay, I'm going to have you sit in a comfortable position with your palms facing up on your lap, open to receive. Begin taking deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you do so, I want you to let go of all thoughts, emotions, and circumstances within your mind, your heart, your energetic field that might interfere with your ability to be open and receive today. When you feel ready to do so, go ahead and allow your physical and inner eyes to close. And go ahead and take 3 more deep breaths, allowing my 0 point energy to surround you, to embrace you, and allow you to not just feel what is said, but to receive it regardless of any thoughts, emotions, or beliefs you might hold in opposition to it. Allow yourself to think and feel as I think and feel, not specific thoughts or emotions, but rather everything and nothing at the same time. No judgments, no right or wrong, simply going with the flow of what is. Our guides, they want you to visualize the 3 phases as a triangle. Of course, it's a triangle. Visualize the peak as the narrowest point, where we are not just the most still, the most present, our emptiest, but have the opportunity to be at our fullest at the same time, free of the massive amounts of heavy distortion that sink to the bottom, and holding only truth, a single truth that encompasses all truths and all beings of light. What rises to the peak, because our light is literally that light. Visualize the lower 2 points, right and left, the widest points, or rather the widest point of the triangle, where we are the most active, where we are doing the work of receiving and releasing, where we are building the momentum that will carry us to the peak until we are able to consistently rise to it without it, where we have received and expanded into more and more light on the right that is waiting to be used, to be embodied by us, and where we hold all of our heavy distortions, our shadows on the left, waiting to be released so that our light can rise easier and easier, so that we can become lighter and lighter. Now, they want you to visualize a spiral moving clockwise around our triangle, representing the forward momentum of not just time, but of our triangle. of our individual and collective journeys. The momentum of everything we are working on. The momentum of expansion and release. The more we receive the remembrance of the who and what of ourselves, the more we open ourselves up to expand into it and beyond it. The easier and faster our release from distortion and shadows becomes, and the easier and faster our triangle and our journeys flow. That is how it is meant to be, but that is not how it has been. When the end and the beginning of each year, each 9-year cycle, each phase itself meets, we find ourselves at the peak of our triangle, on the precipice, in a moment of stillness, of conscious choice. We face the conscious choice between stepping backwards, descending back into where we have already been, into distortion, into our shadows, or stepping forward, descending into the more of what was always meant for us, into truth, into our light. When we consciously choose to step backwards instead of stepping forward, our triangle, it remains static, stuck with us. And we repeat the same phase, the same year, the same 9-year cycle we just completed all over again. For most, and for all of us collectively, often over and over and over again. When we consciously choose to move counterclockwise down the left side of our triangle from the peak, descending back into the past, what we know of as our shadows and as distortion, for rebirth, and then moving across and up the right side of our triangle, ascending back up to the peak, resurrecting ourselves in our light so that we can do it all over again with the next thing, the next shadow, the next distortion. We keep moving backwards, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. We go against the forward momentum and flow of that spiral, and that our triangle, our journey, is meant to follow. Visualize it as trying to swim against the current, as a bird trying to fly into the wind. What does that accomplish? Nothing. The spiral, the current, the wind, the flow keeps moving forward, but our triangle gets stuck in one place, in resistance. Our journey gets stuck in one place. We get stuck in one place. And that is literally the way that we have been taught that it should be, that we have come to believe that it should be, are we not? Always moving counterclockwise into the past, moving downwards to our left along our triangle, descent into shadow and distortion, yin, rebirth, then moving across and upwards to our right along our triangle, ascent into light, yang, resurrection, counterclockwise, stuck in an endless pattern of always remembering what was never meant to be, instead of remembering what was always meant to be, healing what was never real, instead of receiving what is and instantly releasing what isn't. Climbing a ladder to return to the start so we can do it all over again. Stuck, ending in the same place, starting the same cycle again. What the whole system you know of as ascension, what we have all been taught is ascension, is based on the belief that this is how it is meant to be, is a distortion itself. It is backwards. What are we really doing, guys? Why are we always being asked to descend into and continuously fill ourselves, our human thoughts and emotions up with what was never meant for us? What has never been and will never be us. With those heavy distortions that were never real, that will never be real. Why is that what we are being asked to remember when that is not where our true journey to remembrance is meant to lead us? Why are we being asked to ascend from where we are at our most expansive, where we possess the most fuel and momentum? Why are we being asked to use that fuel and momentum to struggle, climbing rung after rung of some ladder back to a peak where we just start the whole thing over and over again, instead of using that fuel and momentum to burn away the heaviness, the shadows and distortions behind us with ease, releasing ourselves from them, allowing ourselves to float back up to the peak. Stop to visualize all of that, to really think about all of that, to recognize the truth in what you have heard so far and the responses your intuition guides you to. Now, let's flip things around. Let's go with the momentum and flow of that spiral instead. Clockwise, forward. We are back at the end and the beginning, the peak of our triangle, the transition between phases, the transition between years, the transition between 9-year cycles, in a moment of stillness, making a conscious choice. This time around, we make a conscious choice to step forward into the more that was always meant for us. When we consciously choose to move forward instead of remaining where we are at, the triangle moves with us, and we begin to remember what was always meant to be, what is real, and not just step into more, expand into more, receive more, but do so easier and easier, faster and faster, until we are moving through it in an instant. We consciously choose to move clockwise into the future, into what is, instead of into the past, into what was. Descent down the right side of our triangle from the peak, remembering and expanding into more and more of what has been and will always be our light, experiencing our resurrection, the widening from the peak to the base of the triangle, expansion and building, fuel and momentum based in our light. Then moving across the bottom and up the left side of our triangle, ascending back to the peak, rising from the ashes of our shadows and distortions, using our light, burning what was never meant for us, what was never real, instead of filling ourselves, our thoughts and emotions with it all over again, experiencing our rebirth without it. The narrowing from the base of the triangle to the peak, release, freedom, continuing to build fuel and momentum, clockwise, always expanding, releasing, flowing, expanding into more and more of our light and truth, and rising from the ashes of more and more of our shadows and distortions. Sounds pretty fucking awesome, right? Now, some of you may be scratching your head at how that entire process can happen in an instant. Remember what was said earlier. When we consciously choose to go with the flow of the spiral, to move forward, the triangle moves with us. It moves faster and faster, easier and easier, until we are always in a point of stillness, always in a moment of conscious choice, always at the end and the beginning. 0 point. The state we, our energy, was always intended to be in. Infinite flow, infinite 0 point. Why is that not the goal we are being taught? Why aren't we being asked to descend into the remembrance of who and what we are? What is and always will be meant for us? The truth. Why aren't we being asked to release ourselves, to ascend from and beyond our perceived shadows and distortions, instead of being asked to descend into them, to drag ourselves through them as if they are us, as if they are real and need to be healed? Stop to visualize that, to really think about that, to recognize the truth in that. Now, think about both directions. That conscious choice from that peak. Which sounds better to you? Which resonates as true for you? Is it what you've always been taught? What you've come to believe because you were taught it? What has kept you stuck in cycle after cycle, phase after phase? Or is it the alternative? Something new, something expansive. The choice seems pretty easy to me. If you are not yet swayed by the shift in perspective asked of you, though, allow our guides to provide additional understanding. The difference between what each point represents in this new light, in contrast to what each point represents in the old distortion. At the peak of our triangle stands Archangel Metatron, the piece of his consciousness that represents stillness and conscious choice, where he serves as an activator of both, if we allow him to do so. Under the old distortion, we are taught that this peak, at the end and the beginning of each phase, of each year, of each 9-year cycle, represents not just a pause, but a sacred pause. When in reality, if we take that pause, it is a hesitation. It is indecision. It is waiting when we should be trusting in the flow of what we have been receiving, what we have been expanding into, and moving forward with it. Why would we ever intentionally delay our journey, delay stepping into and embodying what we have been receiving, remembering, and expanding into? Delay opening ourselves up to receive, remember, and expand more. Worse, it is a hesitation that far too often results in us falling back on the distortion of what we have been taught to do. Resetting, pushing a literal reset button, then it only starts the same phase, year, or cycle we just completed all over again, but it keeps sending us backwards in time, over and over again, instead of forwards, leading us to never actually getting anywhere other than where we have already been, to right back where we started. In the new light, we are being shown that this peak at the end and the beginning of a phase, of the year, of a 9-year cycle, represents stillness, 0 point. Not a pause, for they are not the same thing, but rather a pulse of presence and awareness. Not hesitating, but rather listening to yourself, to your truth, to your intuition, and making a conscious choice to move forward into the next moment instead of backwards into the one that came before it. No longer see that peak, the end and the beginning, as a point where you stop at, but as a point where you choose. Because the universe, it will never ask you to wait. It will only ever invite you to respond. At the bottom right point of our triangle stands Osiris, the piece of his consciousness that represents resurrection, where he serves as an activator of what is already alive within you, what always was and will always be you and your truth. Under the old distortion, we are taught that this point represents ascension, a ladder, rungs we have to climb up to reach a perceived next level. When in reality, if we try to climb that ladder, we are taking away from ourselves, depleting our light and energy. We descend into our shadows and distortions, filling ourselves with them as we do so, making ourselves heavier so that we can be reborn through them, not without them, through them, because healing isn't releasing. Not going to explain that. I'm being told that is for you to think about later, if it is not yet making sense. Then, once we are reborn through them, we are heavy. We have no fuel. We have no momentum. And we are forced to climb, ascend a ladder, so that we can reach the peak and do it all over again. Visualize it as a roller coaster instead of a ladder. How does it feel when a roller coaster is making its way up to the peak before the next drop? How does it feel as it is being forced to build fuel and momentum against gravity, or against the current and against the wind, using our earlier examples? It creaks and it groans. It struggles. It suffers. We struggle. We suffer. For what purpose? To do the same thing all over again. It leads us to never actually getting anywhere other than where we have already been, to right back where we started. Even if we are healing different things within and through our shadows and distortions, even if we believe we are reaching a new level, there is always another shadow and distortion. There is always another level. We are always filling ourselves with heaviness, with density, and emptying ourselves of light. In the new light, we are being shown that this point at the second phase of each year of each 9-year cycle represents resurrection through reclamation, collecting ourselves, much as the pieces of Osiris were collected and put back together. Not resurrecting yourself by ascending a ladder, earning it, for they are not the same thing, but rather resurrecting by descending into, opening ourselves up to, receiving, remembering, and reclaiming, collecting what was always meant to be yours, what has laid hidden behind the 6 veils, waiting for you. You, your galactic half, ready to become one with your human half, your unified purpose, your unified timeline. Not becoming through climbing, struggling, and suffering, but rather reclaiming by trusting, letting go, going with the flow, ease, expanding into more and more of ourselves, our truth, our light. No longer see the right corner as a point where you must ascend through suffering, but as a point where you descend with ease, expand, and reclaim. Because the universe will never ask you to struggle. It will only ever ask you to trust and receive. At the bottom left point of our triangle stands Hades, the piece of his consciousness that represents rebirth, where he serves as an activator for releasing and freeing yourself from that which was never real, that which was never you. Under the old distortion, we are taught that this point represents descending into our shadows and distortions so that we might heal and be reborn through them. Under the old distortion, we are taught that this point represents descending into our shadows and distortions so that we might heal and be reborn through them. When in reality, if we allow ourselves to sink into the depths of them, we are making ourselves heavier. We are strengthening the ability of those shadows and distortions to be perceived as reality, and in turn, making ourselves and our ability to recognize and go with the flow of truth weaker. And once again, the result under the old distortion is that we are healing those shadows and distortions instead of releasing them. We are being reborn through them instead of without them. We continue to carry them, that which is not real, that which makes us weaker, forward with us. Why would we do that to ourselves? I am literally feeling the thoughts and emotions of many that are doing just that right now. And it sucks. It hurts, not just knowing that is what they are putting themselves through, but knowing that it is unnecessary. In the new light, we are being shown that this point at the third phase of each year, of each 9-year cycle, represents rebirth through release, burning away the distortions, all that is not us, all that is not in alignment with who and what we truly are. Much as Hades led souls through the underworld to shed their earthly bindings, so that they may emerge renewed and unburdened upon reincarnation. Not being reborn by descending into your shadows and distortions through healing, for they are not the same thing, but rather being reborn by releasing yourself from the shadows and distortions you have come to perceive, burning away that which is not real, and ascending, rising with ease from the ashes, and moving forward with only truth, with more of you. Not healing by dragging yourself through the heaviness and distortion, struggling and suffering, but rather releasing by trusting, letting go, going with the flow, ease, releasing more and more of what is not real to make more and more room for what is, for ourselves, for our truth, for our light. No longer see that left corner as a point where you must descend through suffering, but as a point where you ascend with ease, release, and make room for more. Because the universe will never ask you to spend a single moment, give a single thought to that which is not real, let alone carry it with you infinitely. It will only ever ask you to trust, hold, and carry your truth, the one truth that belongs to us all. Not going to get into what that is either. I'm once again being told that is for you to think about later if it is not yet making sense. For some of you, it will already make sense. I can tell that it does, especially those that caught the response from our channeled Q&A about 2 weeks ago. All is. It can be nothing else. Is not, does not exist. All is love. All that is not love does not exist. All is as you create it. All that is not as you create it does not exist. If you can grasp that, then you can grasp this. Initiating the shift in your perception, creating momentum for you to begin stepping into and embodying it. That is half of our goal today. The other half is activating this shift in your perception within your 6 bodies, which I am once again being guided to hold space for you to do so yourself. Second time that's happened this month. We'll have to see if it becomes a regular thing. For now, though, set the intention that you activate what we initiated here today. A shift in your perception towards moving forwards, going with the flow, instead of moving backwards, going against it. Towards a cycle of releasing more and more of what isn't, so that we are always receiving more and more of what is, rising from more and more of our shadows and distortions, and expanding into more and more of our light. You can activate this silently. You can do so out loud. You can do so with light language, verbal, hand, whatever feels right for you. And as you do so, I'm being called to have you move your body in a clockwise, circular motion with the flow of that spiral of momentum, with the flow, that triangle of stillness, resurrection, and rebirth is intended to flow. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have you take 3 deep breaths. Coming back to yourself and the space that you're in. Grounding back into your body. And opening your eyes if you've not already done so. Thank you for joining me for today's episode and Fall Equinox Activation. I believe this just might be the shortest recording that I've created and released in months. And I think credit for that, it goes to our guides, Metatron and his earth personifications of Osiris and Hades. They kept it simple and real. I appreciate that. It goes to all of the work that we have been doing through this podcast and our activations. Everything we have been building and culminating over the last 3 months. The momentum for numerous things that we have been initiating and activating over the last 3 months, which might actually all come down to 0 point. I'll have to circle back around and think about that. It also goes to all of you listening, whether this is the first recording of ours that you are listening to or not, for all of the work that you have been doing, all the ways you have been expanding. Thank you for that work, because it fuels my own work collectively. It fuels all of our work collectively. And I think a bit of it also goes to my team and the universe in general for the timing of this recording and its sharing, because I was traveling back and forth from Washington to Kansas over the course of the equinox weekend for my oldest son's wedding. And they blessed me with that break, a 4-day weekend, to be human, to be with family, and to not have to worry about channeling, about recording, about anything. And no, the irony is not lost on me that I selected an image for this equinox-based recording weeks ago that has a rainbow on it. Then went to Kansas over the rainbow, ruby slippers and all, over the equinox weekend. Synchronicity, not intentional, but my inner child got a kick out of it the second I noticed it. I am sure there's some deeper meaning to the why behind the image that hasn't hit me yet, in part because even though I'm not entirely sure how the image connects with what was shared today, I know that it does. I can feel that it does. If any connections come through for you between the image and what was shared today, please share it in the comments with me. This is it for us for the month of September. We will be back in October with our fall energy update, likely next weekend, which will have the themes we will be getting into over the course of October, November, and December. Until then, Yarishkatikati.